for a lot of people is, would it be biased? Is it gonna do it right?
Yeah.
And what have you seen in that area on like where people are worried about the translation layer?
Yeah. So a few things, right? First of all, making sure the input that's coming into the Gen AI platform is curated, right? It's the right data that's coming in to, because one reason why hallucinations occur or bias occurs is because of the kind of data that you're providing or the data you train the AI on, right? So if we can really address the root cause instead of the symptom, then that's a good place to start, right? Get the data right. And we, in the case of our company, we are helping with that curation and ETL, right? Extract, transform, load of the data. So once you do that, you can also use techniques like using different LLMs to get a response and then comparing those responses to make sure that it's not hallucinating. It's not putting out plausible yet completely wrong responses, right? The translation that you're talking about. So there are techniques to do that. We call it, people talk about human in the loop. Of course, that's really good to put humans and verify that the information looks good. It's not, any biased language is not in there. But then you can't scale that, right? The human in the loop for every single transaction. So using AI in the loop with multiple LLMs and, verifying, using LLM as a judge almost, right? To verify each other, right? There are techniques that we have seen that are very, very effective to reduce the occurrence of bias and hallucination. What have you seen, Carlo?
I believe, it's interesting. We are, so what I know from healthcare industry in general, and the number of mistakes a human do is huge. And we are easier to blame the technology than to blame people. Or, I wouldn't say easy, but sometimes we're more comfortable having someone to blame. And I do believe AI will make mistakes, like, don't get me wrong. But in the scope and the magnitude of the efficiency it brings, in retrospect to the human on the loop, which sometimes will probably make worse mistakes, it's probably going to be much, much less. And it's a little bit controversial thought process, but I'm like, at the end of the day, a human is not necessarily doing a much better job. The only difference is you can blame them. Like, right. And in most cases, you can't actually blame them because they're protected by a lot of laws, and rightfully so, they should be. But when it comes to technology, we become like a little bit arrogant about it. And it's like, no, if it makes one mistake, this is all wrong. It's like, and I'm like, yeah, but it saved like so many hours, saved so many people. And yeah, error rate cannot be zero. But there is an error rate of like 45% mistakes, which probably a human will do. And then there is a 2 or 3% or 5%. But again, I think there is, when we start looking about it from this lens, it's like, no, it needs to be 100%. And I'm like, there is nothing 100%. Not a single human will achieve 100%. And if they do, at what cost in the process of reviewing and having multiple layers? And I think it's interesting you mentioned different LLMs judging it because, you have checks and balances. You put checks and balances systems at the end of the day, and they somehow, help reduce the errors, but not eliminate them. But there is I feel like it's an emotional response more than it is actually a rational response for the most. So I think it's a really intriguing area to see how we mature in accepting it as well.
Yeah, it's also interesting. I have a Tesla at home, and recently I was doing felt. You have this full self driving, which has become better and better, right?
Yeah.
And somebody was getting a little upset with, what if what if the car makes a stupid mistake? Well, in my question, you see people driving compared to what? As compared to what, a human? Yeah, so that's interesting that we're quick to judge technology more harshly in some ways than even we do ourselves, right? So
And that's fair. We should judge it harshly, but at the same time, there needs to be a semblance of reason to say, like, it cannot be perfect. We should, I think the, striving for perfection is fine, but like not accepting it unless it's perfect, I think it's really different. Since we're talking about Teslas and we're talking about more practical things, so if you're not an enterprise and you, Satish, are leveraging today AI in different use cases, what can a person today? What have you seen works best in facilitating some of the things you do or the tools that you've used as we kind of bring AI to practice for individuals? What has you seen work? And I'll share some of at least on my side as well.
Yeah, definitely. I love this topic because it's about scaling yourself, right, as a human and leveraging the technology in a personal capacity for personal productivity. Of course, you've seen a lot of, in fact, hundreds of thousands of tools. So some people have come to me and said, can you speak about how you use AI for personal productivity, right? And it's a passion topic of passion for me, right? One of the common tools that you see these days is AI showing up in calls to record calls, right? And to
Yeah.
create summaries and notes. And I love that stuff because, the reason is, sometimes you might not even go to that call, but you still want to know what happened, what was the summary, what were the actions, are there any actions for me, what are the key takeaways, all that, right? And so these note taking apps, I would say there are many of them. I tend to use Otter, which is a very commonly known tool, but there are others, right? Fireflies, I think, and
Yeah.
others that are quite good. Is there one that you use, Carlo?
I use Otter as well. I usually, and
Otter.
it saved my life. Like when I was doing, my interviews for the book, the first book and the second book, I was like, I want to pay attention to the interview and like let the note taking and like kind of capturing if I missed something. So that's really extremely helpful.
Yeah. In fact, I'm writing my second book. I don't know if I told you this, but I can walk around, right? I love going for hikes. So,
Yeah,
how do I accomplish going for hikes and writing my book at the same time? Not different times, at the same
yeah,
time. And so I've used Otter to dictate my manuscript almost. And, once I come back home after 2 or 3 hours of hiking on the weekend, I actually can extract the summary from the book, from the transcription itself and the summary, and continue my book writing, right? I'm writing a book on high stakes public speaking. And that's one example. The other one, think about the other way, right? Which is text to speech. I use an app called Speechify. There could be others, right? But Speechify, I bought a lot of, I love buying books and
yeah.
especially Kindle ebooks. But do I have the time to read those books? Unfortunately not, right? Most cases. So audiobooks have become very popular. But if you don't have an audio version of that book, but you have a ebook, I've been using Speechify to convert, PDFs to audio. So again, on those walks, part of the walk, I can actually listen to a book that I'm interested to get a point of view before I express my own point of view. What about you? Have you used anything around text, speech to text, if you will, or
I
text to speech rather?
The one which I've used recently, which I found really fascinating, and I don't know how to incorporate it yet, but I want to incorporate it. So I do use Otter all the time. I use it extensively. I think it's really important for meetings and stuff, and it removes the focus from note taking and like worrying about missing something. So that's really cool. But I used Google's Notebook LM, which I gave it my book, and I told it, do a podcast on it. And oh my God, like the conversation was like a little bit too real, too scary. I mean, and it came and it brought in some ideas I didn't even expect it. So it's really like if you have any document that you want, it's a huge document, even if it's not your book or whatever, like, and you want to kind of consume it in a little bit differently, throw it into, Notebook LM and let it create a podcast style from it. Such an engaging conversation. Now, it does have some BS in it. I won't, it definitely went on, created there some of its own thinking, but for the most part, it was really cool. So I was like, it's amazing. It captured the human emotion and that kind of dialogue aspect much better than I thought. So it's really neat, like something as, to lean into.
Yeah. The other one, most people say ChatGPT. That's why I didn't bring it up. I would have started with ChatGPT. But I like Mag AI. I think you introduced me to it, actually. If I, Mag AI, I like because it gives me 16 different models to use. It gives me 40 different personas to use, right? If you think back to the adverse events use case we talked about for companies, if you use Gen AI and asked, in this case, whatever the LLM is, to be a physician while it looks for the adverse event, that persona, it makes the translation, if you will, much better. The output from Gen AI, right? So what I like about Mag AI is it gives you 40 different personalities, 16 different models, whether it's text-based models, image models, whatever it is. And I really like that. The other one that I like is Canva.
Yeah.
They've injected AI into Canva, made it even better. Another thing that I use is ClickUp, which is a really useful tool for project management. And they have injected AI into ClickUp, right? And it makes it really interesting and useful because I use virtual assistants or 5 hours projects who are doing small things for me. And to manage that project, ClickUp is a useful tool. And most of these tools are mostly free. If you want to use it for Teams and so on, you have to pay. But I think it's very helpful. And it's really, I call it going from X to 10X and scaling yourself. I mean, if
Yeah.
you are a business professional, you're an entrepreneur. I actually do a talk on this topic just because I want to create impact for a lot of the people that are struggling with time. I mean, many of the apps were supposed to make our lives easier and give us more time, but we find that that's not the case. But I think AI brings a promise that we have not seen in a while now, right? So to truly free up time so that you can spend more time with your family, more time on things you love.
Awesome, Satish. We've covered so many different areas. I think, from mindset changes to understanding AI to the efficiency build up, as well as the freeing time concept. I'm going to end with one question, which is, so you're gathering all of this free time now because you are leveraging AI to the maximum. What would you like to do with that? What's your next impossible? Is there any marathons down the road? Is it the next book? What comes to mind?
Hey, Carlo, great question. For the longest time, we all have been moving from the expert. You have been the expert, right? I've been the expert in writing a book on, growth, right? Driving runaway growth is the book I wrote on because I believed in, scaling yourself, achieving the impossible, right? All that. My role right now is about moving from the expert to becoming the guide. And that's where I think AI will help me because, you know, if I can impact more people because of AI, if I can scale myself and reach more people, maybe it's writing books, maybe it's creating videos using AI, because I can't be in every single video. I can use text and create videos that are kind of avatars like myself, right? But I'm able to reach more people with the message. The message is more important to me than how I do it, right? And if I can do that more and go from being the hero to the guide and doing it in ways much more easily while even still finding time for my family, finding time for the things I love to do with people, family and friends and so on, right? That's, I think, what I'm most excited about, that AI can do that for me. I see the possibilities, and if I can achieve that, going from hero to the guide, I think that's my dream.
I already think you're on that trajectory anyhow. I think it is a challenge. I think we need more guides, to be honest. I think we have enough heroes. I think we have enough experts. I think we really need to have more guys supporting each other. I as well believe experts tell you move from 1A to Z, and these are the steps, while guides basically tell you how to handle any situation. And I think that's much more powerful in retrospect. And I loved what you said around, it doesn't matter how. the What's important is the message. What's important is are people able to extract value? If that means, you're an avatar that is talking and sending the message or whatever is required to make it first accessible, makes it reach the right audience, and probably at the cost level that everyone can have it. I think that's really key. And that will open those channels to multiple people.